should probably pull up my stream as well, since we're streaming to my Twitch. Just make sure I have my chat open. All right, Mattia, I'm just going to run to the restroom really quick before we get fully started, but I'll be right back.
Yes. Okay. So meanwhile, we wait for Maxwell. I think that we are already live on some platforms. I think that we are already live on Twitch. We should be already live on Riverside as well, and we should already be live in a couple other platforms. So if so, it's now your moment to say, yes, you are indeed live in the chat, and just to say hi. So today we have a couple of interesting things to show and discuss. Let's see. Okay, this setup should be okay. This should be okay. And we should be live as well on YouTube, it seems. Yes. Welcome back.
Thank you. 60 more seconds and then we can get started.
Yes, we should be live on YouTube as well.
Excellent. Let me check.
Nice.
Cool.
Yes. I think I'll need to adjust my webcam in the future because it's not nice to see my incoming boldness, but that's another topic.
I gotta pop out all the different chats I need to follow so that I don't have to keep all these streams open.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody on YouTube. Sorry, just confirming. All right. Okay, I think we can probably get started.
Yes. So. Let's chat.
Let me just move my. I have like so many different chat windows open right now. This is ridiculous.
Okay.
What the heck? How do I?
I'm gonna wait a second for your fighting windows.
Sharp. Max needs the streamer upgrade for his camera. I wonder if I'm using my iPhone. I wonder if it's because I have it set to like HD. Mode,
probably like some like connection cap between the iPhone and.
Probably.
I mean, last time I streamed, my connection was like awful, so probably it's time for a reverse of roles. This time.
Well,
this time I got to be the sharp one.
Yeah, this time Mattia gets to be sharp. I get to be fuzzy. Well, people on YouTube think that we're going to be chatting about the Effect language service because you're here. But in reality, we have a very exciting announcement.
Yes.
Let me share my screen. Share screen. So Effect 4 is officially in beta.
Yes.
Very exciting. For everybody watching the office hours, you're the first ones to know.
Probably
we
even
hired
before
that.
us.
Yeah, exactly. You get a car. But yeah, for anybody who wants to go ahead and try Effect.For the beta release, you can go ahead and do it today. And we're going to spend office hours today basically chatting about the beta, what to expect, and we'll probably have a couple of streams where we talk about the Effect.For beta, like Effect.For in general, migration, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is very exciting. There's a blog post that you all can go read on the Effect website. But Effect.For is kind of the culmination of more than, I think, 6 years. Mike can probably correct me if I'm wrong. More than 6 years of experimentation and feedback from the community and trial and error and failed ideas and things like that. And so we're super excited that we're finally able to get it into everybody's hands more properly. Obviously, we were publishing snapshots before while we were sort of in alpha, but yeah, we're now officially in beta and publishing to npm. But yeah, this is super exciting for us, and we're really excited to get this into your hands.
Yeah.
Can we drop links into the chat? Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me. So, I mean, the blog post highlights some of the major changes that, or major things to be excited about with Effect.For, but in reality, like the number of things that are changing is a little bit too much to enumerate in a single blog post. But we can kind of go through this, like what we wrote about, and then we can go through some other information, answer questions, etc., etc. But yeah, super pumped, very excited. Mattia, are you excited?
Oh yeah, indeed. Also wanted to point out that maybe it could be interesting for next streams if some of you in the chat has maybe some effect snippets that are not sure how to potentially migrate or test v4 with. We could look into and see how they will look like with v4 for next times.
It's a really good idea. Yeah. I think that we're probably going to dedicate office hours for the next several times for the foreseeable future to Effect.For stuff. So yeah, that's a really nice idea, Mattia. If you guys start migrating and have questions or whatever, bring them to office hours and we can talk about it. But yeah, maybe we can like quickly run through this blog. I'm not going to read it to you, but we can go over like the highlights. So I mentioned this is kind of the culmination of years of feedback from the community. And it's not just feedback from Effect.3. It's like feedback that we've been accumulating since, I mean, Effect was made an open source project by Mike way back in the day. We're really excited about where v4 is going, and I think we'll talk about the long-term goals that we have for the project, but some of the things that you'll feel like right away as you start using Effect v4. We rewrote the core Fiber runtime from scratch. It should have significantly lower memory overhead, faster execution, and much simpler internals, and so every Effect application using v4 should benefit from this immediately. Every Effect application should benefit from a faster Fiber runtime right away. And because of this rewrite, we took the opportunity to also rewrite a number of other core Effect modules. So stream was rewritten from the ground up, channel was rewritten from the ground up, schedule was rewritten from the ground up, metrics were rewritten from the ground up. I'm trying to think of like other things that we rewrote from the ground up.
Yeah.
There were a lot of rewrites that we did. But the rationale for that was that we wanted to simplify things and make things faster where we could, but we also saw a lot of opportunity for making Effect smaller. So the Effect v4 project is published, as most of you know at this point. Oh yeah, Schema. How could I forget Schema? Oh my God, Julio literally rewrote everything to do with Schema. And it's so much better now. It's so cool what you can do with Schema in v4. But yeah, so speed was certainly one thing we were really interested in tackling with v4. I mean, v3 is still a very fast runtime, but we knew we had work to do to make it faster. So we don't have specific v3 versus v4 benchmarks that we're publishing because we're not like super interested in that comparison. But for the benchmarks that we've done internally, and also I think Mike also showcased some of these like v3 versus v4 comparisons at last year's Effect Days, there should be like a substantial speed boost that you get just from using v4. And in some cases, like we were joking around that Tim refactored something to do with streaming. I think it was like buffering in streams or something like that, and it was 100 times faster than it is in v3. And so Tim was concerned that we actually yeah, he was concerned that we actually broke something because of how fast it is now. So yeah, concurrent streaming scenarios should be a lot faster. Anyway, we're really excited about the speed boost and the better memory overhead with the simpler Fiber runtime. But the rewrite also made Effect a lot lighter in terms of like bundle size. So like one of the most common concerns about Effect for people who want to use it on the front end is the bundle size in general. People have been like concerned about how big Effect is as like a package. And I see like my little video here is not working, so I'll need to fix that. Maybe if I refresh. Nope. All right. Well, I'll fix this later. It's always been a tree shakeable project. Effect's always been very like removed a set timeout. Indeed. Effect's always been like very tree shakeable. But in v4, because of the rewrite that we did to a lot of the core modules, we were able to make them smaller and more efficient. So a minimal program in Effect using Effect, Stream, and Schema, for example, which is like, I feel like most applications will probably be incorporating at least Effect, Schema, and maybe Streams. In v3, depending on which combinators you were using and what like features of each module you were using, the minimum bundle was somewhere between 65 and 70 kilobytes just using these three modules. And in v4, that drops like almost 70, like quite a substantial amount, from 70 kilobytes to 20 kilobytes. And that's using all three of these modules, which is pretty nice. So, sorry, I'm just making sure that streams are still working, and my Mac just did like a weird screen flicker. So yeah, you should see like a substantial reduction in bundle size as well with v4. I think it was Mike who said at Effect Days last year that the core runtime of Effect now, like a minimum bundle that runs like a simple program with Effect, is actually smaller than Micro from v3. So I think that what you're going to see is Effect will be much more feasible for the front end use case. And we're interested in like exploring that direction as well moving forward. So yeah, bundle size is super exciting. The runtime is a lot faster. I think one thing that's more of like a practical concern that people will be really excited about is our versioning scheme moving forward from v4 onward. So in v3, every package was versioned independently. And we made that decision like for practical reasons. Like the idea was that we didn't want to have package updates going out when there were no changes to a given package. But what we learned over time is that nobody really cares about that. It was much more painful to upgrade Effect versions and get things perfectly compatible, because you had to go to the change logs. You had to figure out, okay, Effect 3.xyz was released and now I need to upgrade to the proper version of like platform or SQL or whatever. And so in V4, that's all over. We decided to make all Effect ecosystem packages share a single version number and release them all together. So when you see, for example, like Effect V4 beta 0, you'll know that the compatible package for SQL, for example, is the same version tag. So obviously the trade-off here is that we'll have package updates going out when there are no like changes to that package per se. But we believe this is a worthwhile trade-off for much like simpler dependency management. And kind of going along with this, many of the previously separate and disparate packages have been consolidated into Effect. So things that were spread across like Effect platform, RPC, cluster, blah, blah, blah. We've now consolidated all of this directly into the Effect package. So for those of you who've been following Effect v4 development, you'll notice that we have like an unstable directory in Effect. So you can import from like Effect unstable. And that'll give you access to unstable modules, which I'll go over in a second. But there are still going to be separate packages for things that are platform or provider or technology specific. So things like the platform packages are still separate. The individual SQL drivers are still separate. AI provider packages are still separate, although the core AI SDK is now like under the Effect package. So long story short, not only is like should versioning get a lot easier for folks using Effect in v4, but like you'll have a lot less packages to install. You should have a significantly lower number of packages you need to install. And the idea here is like all the core abstractions live in Effect. Things that are agnostic of the technology you're using live in Effect. And then the specific implementations that you want to connect to will live in their own packages. And I kind of mentioned this like unstable modules thing. In Effect v4, we introduced the concept of unstable modules. And the idea here is that we can actually publish functionality. Oh, Dylan's rating with a party of folks from his channel. What's up, Dylan viewers? For all the folks joining from Dylan's stream, I'll just quickly announce again, Effect v4 is now officially in beta. So you can go ahead and install it today. So Dylan is right. 8 months of pure grit, love, and commitment. It was more than 8 months. 8 months since we first started talking about it, I guess. But I spoke at the beginning of this stream about how the journey to Effect v4 is probably like 6 years long. Many years of experimentation and trial and error and listening to the community. And so we've been talking about like different things that we've done to like address long-standing feedback. So we talked about how and actually I'll just post the
link again, yeah,
in my Twitch. Anyway, v4's runtime is significantly faster. We rewrote the whole runtime. I'm not going to like rehash everything I just spoke about, but I'll kind of just do a high level. The bundle size is substantially smaller. So like a minimum Effect application that's, running Effect, Stream, and Schema using these modules should cut your bundle size by quite a significant amount in v4. I think people will be excited about the versioning scheme coming from Dylan's stream. So from v4 onward, every single package that you install will have the same version. Mike is right. He said it was going to be stable by the end of summer, but we didn't say whose summer. So Tim's summer is just drawing to a close. Remember, Tim is in the southern hemisphere. So, so anyway, yeah, you should. Versioning should be a lot easier because every single Effect package is going to be versioned in lockstep. And we've consolidated a bunch of things into the core Effect package. That's kind of what we were talking about now. is that the only packages that'll remain separate are things that are like the specific implementations of things that live in the core package. And we were kind of just starting to chat about how in V4 we're introducing unstable modules. Mattia, I don't know if you want to add anything for
No,
the
just wanted
folks
to
coming
point
from Dylan's stream.
wanted to point it out what you were saying, that now having all of the abstraction in the core effect module is amazing if you think about it, because effect already embraces layers, dependency injection. So you can now imagine having a full application having as a dependency just effect, and that's it. And then you have like entry points for your application that pulls in the specific dependency types you want to use, ban, SQLites, whatever, and start up your application. And your entire code is fully abstracted away of what are you using. So you can decide at the last time what you want to switch to or where you want to run. And these per platform packages are now like insanely good.
Yep. And we were just starting to talk about unstable modules. So in Effect V4, to allow us to, so in V3, when we had new functionality, we wanted to like make available to folks, we had to either create a new package, which then you had to like install and keep in sync, and it was really annoying, or we had to add like functionality backwards compatible to existing packages if they were already stable. And that was kind of annoying for both us and for end users. And so in V4, we decided to introduce this concept of unstable modules, where we can ship new and like breaking changes inside the core effect package, but without committing to Semver stability for those APIs that are still evolving. And the contract that we're making with folks is relatively simple. Anything under effect unstable might receive breaking changes in minors. And modules that are outside unstable would follow like strict Semver. So the idea is that if you're importing from like effect or effect streams or whatever, anything that's at like the top level and outside of the unstable subdirectory will follow strict Semver guidelines. No breaking changes until the next major version, etc., etc. Anything under unstable, we reserve the right to break between minors. And obviously, we would let folks know what breaking changes exist in our change logs, just like we always do. And as these unstable modules sort of like reach maturity and we're ready to graduate them into stable modules, we would move them out of unstable into the top level effect namespace. So for example, under the unstable modules right now is like all the HTTP stuff, right? So it's effect unstable HTTP client response, etc., etc. Once HTTP stabilizes, it would become effect HTTP instead of effect unstable HTTP. And so this gives us flexibility. We can ship new features.
It is also more clear towards user what's actually unstable and what's is stable, because previously one could miss the information, hey, you're using this, but it's unstable. And now you just read unstable and they say, okay, that's unstable, I know.
Well, even also with Semver versioning, I actually had no idea that like before you reach a major, like minors are considered breaking. And like I learned that when I started working on Effect several years ago, but like it's not super semantic common knowledge. So I feel like you said, Mattia, this should be a lot clearer for folks who want to use unstable features. And I don't know if this will update my. Let me just see. Can you folks still see my screen? Yeah, it looks like you should still be. So like when you import from effect unstable, you'll be getting access to all of these different modules. So the core AI abstractions, CLI is under unstable, cluster, DevTools, encoding, event log, HTTP, blah, 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 blah. All of these things are now in the core effect package, and you don't have to install extra ones to get access to these things. So anyways, like I said, contract is very simple. Anything unstable is breaking changes between minors. I have a question in chat about Schema. Schema is stable. It's in the stable namespace here. Where is it? Over here. Schema. Here.
Yes.
But there are certain features that Julio's been working on related to schema that are considered unstable. So for example, if we go to, I'll open another link, go to source, unstable. I know this is really small, actually. Let me zoom in.
Yeah.
So there are certain schema features that we're keeping unstable. So things like the model abstraction. I guess this is technically a Tim invention. Oops. And then like the variant schema. These things are considered unstable. But there's a lot of like schema modules that are in the stable namespace. And I'm not going to go, maybe we'll reserve like a whole separate stream for schema, and maybe we'll bring like Julio on if he's interested. If not, we can always talk about this. But like the number of cool and exciting features of schema in V4 is just like unreal.
Yeah.
Like
is a whole new world, the V4, that once you try it, you say, okay, what I have been using up to now.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just, yeah, I mean, a good example is like in the AI packages, one of the common pieces, gripes and feedback things that I would get from folks is that when you declare a schema, there was no way for us to let you know ahead of time that the JSON schema that schema would get transformed to would be invalid per the provider. Like, for example, most providers don't accept like tuple representations, or there's specific restrictions on like filters and things like that. So for V4, Julio wrote a set of helpers that basically for the AI modules that allow me to transform under the hood the schema that you give me into a format that's compatible by the provider, and like taking any filters and things like that that are not valid per the provider and shoving it into this description of like those properties, send it to the provider, let them generate the object, send it back, and then transform it backwards into the object that that I want. So like it's just like a really small example of like what V4 schema can do. But like
another one that usually people ask about is, I have a schema with hundreds of properties, I want to make all of them optional. And right now it's like a madness to do, because you need to like manually picking them and now mark them as optional or whatever. And with V4 you basically do your schema.map fields and you provide schema.optional key, and now you have a new schema that has all of the keys optional, which is like amazing. That's one of probably the use cases I have most heard of.
Yeah, the ability to transform schemas has evolved substantially. And like I said, we'll probably do another, maybe like the next office hours or a future office hours on just like schema stuff, because there's so much to chat about. But we can finish like going through maybe some of this information, and then talk about like what migration looks like and what our vision for the near term and long term is, and then we can answer questions and sort of go from there. But for most of you who've been following V4 development, you know that the code base for V4 lives in the Effect small repository, codenamed small because Effect V4 is so much smaller than V3. So if you have issues or pull requests or discussions or things that you want to suggest for V4, they should all be directed there. Please don't open up V4 issues or pull requests against V3, because they'll just be closed. We're trying to keep separation while V4 is in beta, because it's just cleaner for us. We're a small team of maintainers, so we need to avoid split brain. Also, just reiterating, this is a beta. It is not a stable release of V4. So we're going to be iterating very quickly on feedback. Beta releases may and probably will introduce breaking changes between beta versions. So I mentioned before that the version tag that's been released today is Effect V4-beta.0. .1 could easily have many breaking changes, but we'll do our best to document those things as we normally would in the change logs for each package. So Ratius has a question that I'll address maybe after I finish talking about the spec schema. But where was here we go. So yeah, individual beta versions will potentially include breaking changes because APIs are going to be evolving as we incorporate real-world feedback. We're going to be addressing bugs, refining design choices, and we're going to do our best to document these things in the package change logs, but you should not assume stability between different beta versions.
Yeah. So rules of thumb, no heavy production use right now. But yeah.
we say that, and like tomorrow we're gonna get like 10
Tomorrow,
different people
yeah.
who are
Tomorrow
already shipped
everyone
this to
will have.
production, and
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're running Effect in production, we still recommend V3 as our stable choice for the moment. You can obviously experiment with V4 to your heart's content, but we still recommend V3 for production use cases. But once V4 does stabilize, we're committing to a long-term stability, like release. We don't have a schedule for this yet, but what we want is for V4 to be like an LTS release. We don't want to have major breaking changes like V3 to V4 frequently in the future. We'd rather try to have like a more like long-term stability schedule. So we don't have a timeline for how long Effect V4 is going to remain in beta. We're going to take all the time we need to feel comfortable about stability, just like we took all the time we needed to feel comfortable about shipping Effect V4 to beta. So yeah, Mattia, I don't know if you have comments on that.
No, I think that I'm okay. I just saw a question that I want to address. Probably, I've seen asked if Effect Atom supports V4 beta. Well, good news. Effect Atom is now part of the Effect namespace, so you can see in there that we should have packages. Yes, Atom, and if you use that version, that is free and compatible with the V4 beta.
Yeah, and the Atom modules, I think, are in the unstable namespace somewhere here. The core ones, reactivity. Yeah. So unstable reactivity has all of like the abstractions.
Yeah.
And then the individual like provider packages are here. And I think Tim still exports everything from the core packages. I could be wrong.
I thought yes as well. In index probably.
Oh no, I might be wrong.
Yeah.
So you may need to install both now. I'm not sure.
Which kind of makes sense, because still you will need to use like the effect types, but use the Atom React runtime. So it makes sense,
Is there Effect Atom View? Yes, there is. There's Effect Atom View, there's Effect Atom React, and there's Effect Atom Solid. So anyway, getting back to the beta phase. So that's kind of what we're committing to is we're going to be iterating quickly based on feedback. So please open up issues, pull requests, whatever in the Effect small repository. Provide us with feedback. We're going to try to move as quickly as we can. Effect V4 will be in beta for however long we think it needs to be. But once we stabilize, we're going to publish a long-term release schedule, meaning how long V4 we're committing to keep it stable, when we can like expect to have breaking changes, and how long we're going to be supporting V3. Effect V3 moving forward. So now that Effect V4 is in beta, we're going to continue, obviously, to maintain Effect V3. It will continue to receive active maintenance, even after we reach stability. We'll publish a maintenance schedule for V3 once V4 is in its long-term, once we have reached stability. But one thing to note is now that we've hit beta for V4, we're introducing a feature freeze for V3. So V3 will continue to receive bug fixes, security patches, etc., etc., etc. But no new features will be developed for Effect V3. And that's primarily to make sure we can focus on making V4 as good as it can be. So any new features will be developed exclusively for V4. Yeah. for migration, if you're coming from v3, the core models that we have should feel relatively similar. Most of the changes are going to be around how packages are organized and how things are versioned, etc. There are like renamings and different decisions that we've made around specific APIs. So we're working on migration guides. So if you want to take a look, I've started working on a set of migration guides for v3 to v4. All of these migration guides are indexed from this migration.md in the Effect small repo. This will continue to evolve. It's not comprehensive at the moment. And there's a separate migration guide for Schema because the changes for Schema are massive. The core, I don't want people to be too scared. The core of Schema should feel very similar. But once you start doing things like transformations and things like that, there's different things you'll need to learn. And Julio has an exhaustive, and when I say exhaustive, I mean exhaustive.
It's more like also an introduction rather than like a migration, because like it showcases a lot of features that maybe you didn't know about that were already in Effect v3, and now you can use this document also like as discovering new features of Effect Schema for v4.
Yeah. And there is a migration guide that Julio's been trying to keep up to date for v3 at the very bottom of this document. So if you open up the index and scroll to the bottom, you can like go to the, whoops, I did not mean to click that. You can see like different migration instructions. So like talking about what v3 versus v4 looks like. And I need to start indexing some of these other modules as well, because Julio has been working on documents, for example, like the changes to config, the changes to other things, like optics are now supported in Schema, which is kind of cool. And so anyway, the migration guides will continue to be updated over time. But we've already started working on like some of the major pieces of migration, which we can talk about in today or in future office hours, whatever. While we're in beta, I know like the next logical question I'm going to see like 1,000 times in chat when I look over at it is like, docs when? We are going to be rebuilding the Effect documentation from the ground up for v4 with like new landing page, new documentation setup structure. So again, we're going to take the time to get that right. We're not going to rush out a doc site just so folks can have access to it. We've been trying to make the core packages themselves as consumable by like AI agents as we can. So if you, for example, like clone this Effect small repo to your local environment and chat with your AI agent of choice about it, most of the modules now have pretty detailed JS docs for each method. You'll see Effect takes like 12 years to load because we've been trying to enhance the examples and JS docs associated with these modules, but we have a lot of plans for, number one, making the docs better, right? And then also for making the project and Effect in general work as well as it possibly can with LLMs. So please give us time. Are there generated API docs? I think that we're doing that. Hang on. If not, we can certainly do that. Packages, Effect. Maybe not. Sebastian, do we have docgen docs? Anyway, so please give us time. But the other thing we're also interested in exploring is other types of migration tooling to help folks out. So things like code mods for simple renamings and other things that we can actually code mod for you. AI assisted migration skills. So like maybe giving your LLMs access to like a set of skills for helping you with migrating between Effect v3 and v4. These don't exist yet, but it's stuff we're exploring. We wanted to prioritize getting the beta release into your hands over delaying it to build out all the migration tooling, because we felt like that was the right thing to do. And we also felt like the feedback that we would receive would help inform these different like migration tools that make the most sense. So please give it a try. Please open any issues, bug reports, pull requests, etc. on the Effect Small repo. And I also just like want to give a shout out to the whole team. So Julio, Tim, Mike, Mattia, myself, Mirella, Sebastian, Kit, like everybody who's helped shape. Who did I miss? Did I miss anybody?
Mike.
I said Mike.
Oh,
I
Mike.
think.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike's not that important. He's been off in LLM land for too long now.
Yeah.
For the whole team basically for the amount of work that they've poured into Effect V4. I kind of say it here, but like the sheer scope of what has been rethought for this release, what's been rewritten, how much work we've put into trying to refine these APIs is just enormous. And so like massive kudos to the whole core team who have helped out. And I also want to give a pretty massive shout out as well to the community, because the feedback that you all have shared over the last, I don't know, however many years Effect's been open source, has directly shaped like the decisions we've made in V4.
Yeah.
And so yeah, many of the changes we've made exist because somebody in the community pointed out a rough edge or suggested something better or shared how they were using Effect or whatever. And so like massive thanks to the whole community as well for the feedback that you've shared, the feedback you continue to share, and the feedback that I hope you'll continue to share on V4. So yeah, we're very excited about Effect V4, and we're looking forward to hearing what you all think. Mike, I didn't do anything for V4 basically. True.
Yeah.
Mike would just swoop in and say, well, this sucks. We need to fix this.
Yeah. It's still valuable feedback, you know.
It is. So yeah, let me take a second to scroll through. I don't know, Mattia, if you saw any.
Yeah, I've keeping an eye on the question, and I think that you almost clearly Effect V5 when man.
I don't know who FIWS is in the
Yeah.
YouTube chat, but they're about to get banned. Just kidding.
I just saw previously like a question about comparison with the performance of Zod, Valibot, and Effect Schema, and asking if V4 will address something about that. And maybe I can just like point out a couple of things if we don't see any other questions that are like more urgent or have been made before. I don't think. Yeah. So as we mentioned, like Effect Schema got like a huge rewrite, and you'll see like a lot of comparisons with Valibot, Zod, or whatever. One thing that you have to keep in mind when seeing those like comparison is like first the features they provide, because like some of the libraries that Effect Schema is compared against just do validation and that's it. Some of them even do not do like two-way encoding and decoding, but just like validation and that's it. So that's indeed something that makes Effect Schema like heavier and slower. But the other thing that I will also to point out is that like some of those libraries, I think latest version of Thought, for example, basically use an optimization where they use like the new function constructor in order to construct a faster way to parse and decode objects, for example. And that's indeed faster, but the issue is that there are some environments where arbitrary JS code execution, like new function or eval, is banned, and so those kind of libraries won't work in that environment. Whereas with Effect Schema, we try again. Effect tries to run wherever. So initially we won't take that approach, even though we know that's indeed faster the way that works, but we point mostly on like working everywhere. But that does not exclude that in the future there may be some experimentation about that. But at the moment, that's why you see like the performance comparison and you see the difference. And just wanted to point out that, and I think that if someone has other questions.
I think Mike mentioned in my Twitch chat that they do work, but they need fallbacks to do so. And
Yeah.
the design goals of Schema are also different than some of these other frameworks. The design, like Schema, also integrates with Effect natively, so asynchronous transformations, for example, are possible without having to do a lot of extra work with Schema. Asynchronous filters, I think, are supported in v4 too. So yeah, the v4 Schema is definitely much lighter than v3, but it's still going to be the design goals and the features that we're trying to support are slightly different than some of these other libraries. In particular, I think that for Zod and Valibot and a lot of these other libraries, codec type decoding and encoding. When I say codec, I mean like being able to decode and encode. Was, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it was added after the fact. Whereas with Schema, we were focused on production use cases, and so being able to both decode data coming into your application and encode data that's going to be going out of your application were two core design goals, even from v3. So anyway, that's why, you know, these comparisons are not necessarily always the best. But listen, Zod and Valibot and the other libraries that are out there certainly all have their use cases. Schema just has its own set of, yeah.
Like always, it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. Classic software engineering excuse. It depends. Does Effect work with the AI SDK? If by the AI SDK you mean the Effect AI SDK, yes. If you mean the Vercel AI SDK, no. You can wrap the Vercel AI SDK with Effect and certainly use it that way. And I've done some experimentation in v3 with like being able to run Effects AI SDK on the back end and stream data to a Vercel AI SDK front end, which works. You just have to like encode the information in a Vercel AI SDK supported way. But at the moment, they're kind of like two separate projects. There's another question about, where was it? Will there be an RC after beta or straight to stable? That's a good question. We're not sure. At the moment, our to-do list, the famous to-do list that everybody's pinged me about 150 times, indicates that we'll probably move to like some sort of release candidate phase after beta, but we may not need to. We have no idea. We're not thinking this far ahead yet. Now that we're in beta and people can actually have access to Effect outside of just installing snapshots, our focus is on kind of the things that we discussed, and we don't have a timeline, like I said. So once we feel like the beta has stabilized enough, we'll start making some decisions about whether or not we want to have a release candidate phase or not.
Again, it depends on the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's going to be probably, oh yeah, Mike says probably we will do so to signal production testing. But Mike, like, let's be real, people are shipping this to production tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you all have any more thoughts about where you'd like to take support for Effect on the front end? Good question, RJ. Nice. Also, hello. I saw your Confect was recently released, so congratulations on that, if that's the correct RJ. I think it is. So there's people with snapshots in prod, Mike says. That's correct. Yeah. There are people running Effect v4 snapshots in production. That's true. I mean, anyway, for front end use cases, we want to make Effect. I don't want to like I don't want to like commit to anything. When you say something and then people are just gonna be like, "Well, you said this."
Yeah.
Um,
It's written in the stone now.
it is written in the stone. You can't go back. Um, we are very interested in exploring Effect on the front end, like a more frameworky solution for Effect on the front end. Sebastian has already been building out like a router-esque solution for Effect that I think is pretty interesting. But it's like super early. Like we're just starting to experiment. But I think what we'd like to see is Effect solving the problems of a lot of these front-end frameworks. Yeah. Will there be an Effect v4 channel in Discord to focus these conversations? Or are we just getting good at annotating? That's actually a really good question, Lloyd. I think maybe we do want a v4 channel. Mike, what do you think? While Mike answers, let's just see. Can you go over the missing to-dos? Actually, I swear. Let me just. I can't click this. Oh god.
Yeah. Wait, I can check all of the missing to do for you now, so there aren't missing to do.
Yeah. I think Lloyd. We probably will. We probably will open up a v4 channel, like an Effect v4 channel or something like that, so we can have more focused conversations. Because you're right, otherwise it's going to become a mess. Effect versus TanStack, the battle of the century. Yeah, I don't know about that quite yet, but maybe that's somewhere we'll go in the future. I don't know. I think for now it's just exploration, figuring out or Mike says, yeah, we should probably open a v4 channel, or we just redirect all those to Max's DMs. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we're really excited. I think this is hopefully going to be a really unlock for a lot of folks in terms of like performance, in terms of simplicity, in terms of like making the code base easier for LLMs to understand. And we're going to keep moving in that direction. But yeah. Good question. I just saw. Will Effect v4 be merged at some point into the original repository, or will it replace the original one? Just curious, why did you guys decide to create a new repo, and are you guys happy that you did? It's a good question. We've spoken about this a couple of times. We haven't made any like concrete decisions, but we are. What's up, Tej? How's it going? Effect v4 hype. I think that thank you, Brendan. Appreciate it. Congrats on the v4 beta. Thank you very much for your congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that our plan is to merge Effect small back into the main repository at some point, but probably not until we're getting closer to like a stable release. And the rationale for us developing it in a new repository is just the sheer scope of how many things we changed. It started out as an experiment. Like Effect small was like a joke experiment. Even the name of the repository is like a joke, sort of. And then like we just kept developing it out of there, and having that clean separation instead of having to remember which branch you're pushing to or whatever is actually, in my opinion, quite nice to keep, like, again, avoiding the split brain. Tej, thank you very much for the Prime, and Baze also thank you very much for the Prime. Really appreciate your guys' support. Hope you all are excited about Effect v4 being in beta. But yeah, that was kind of like the rationale, was to keep things simple and separated. Are we happy that we did? I think so. I'm happy that I don't need to keep track of which branch I'm opening PRs against, and I can sort of like have a separate place to explore v4 things.
Also,
fun fact, Twitch Prime is free. Mattia, what do you think? Are you happy that we have
No, I am happy.
places?
Also, yeah, I think that things like CI workflows or whatever would have been like a madness to like keep tracking us like a single like monorepo with different branches or whatever. Whereas like with two separate repos, we are basically free to try whatever we want on v4. That's what we did, and now we are like free to eventually like see if we can like merge back.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I will say about that is there was like a little bit of like panic happening behind the scenes before the stream started, because I actually could not get v4 to publish properly, because we are publishing from a separate repository. Like you can't, apparently with npm you cannot have two registered what is it called,
repositories.
for the trusted publishers. You can't have like two OIDC trusted publisher repositories registered to a single npm package. So I had to set up like scoped granular token publishing for one repository, and then I was having a lot of problems with that. So anyways, up until about 10 minutes before this stream, v4 still wasn't in beta. So am I supposed to use class-based services or function-based? Tej, let me direct you to my beautiful migration guide on services. Actually, maybe this is a good time for us to like dive into one of these, and then we can close the stream like with this. So unless you guys want us to keep going, I don't really care. As I mentioned in the beta blog post here, it links to where are we? Migrating. There's a migration guide. It is not complete. It is still under heavy development. However, if you go to the migration guide in the Effect small repo, you will see there are some migration guides I've created, one of which being around services. So in Effect v4, for those of you who have been following development, context.tag is not a thing anymore. It has been renamed to service map. So context is renamed to service map, and tag has been renamed to service. And the reason why we did this was mostly to make things a little more semantic, because a context is just a map of services. We decided to name it service map. And when you're defining like a service, basically, like things shouldn't be too much different. It's just a matter of like renaming some stuff. But for class-based services, we reorganized the type parameters. So we wanted every single one of these class APIs we have that has like identifier with parameters and then another empty curly bracket. It was like every single one had a different order that you had to put things in. And it was like ridiculous because they were all developed at different points in time. So in v4, we tried to like unify the structure of all of this. So in v4, you still like create a service map service the same way you'd create a context tag service, but instead the type parameters come first, and then these like brackets come second. And I think Mattia already has support for this in the LSP.
Yes, the LSP, yes, the new LSP. I need to do a patch release, but the current version of the LSP, if you update to the latest one, already supports and should basically automatically detect whether you're using Effect version 3 or version 4, and should adapt the suggestion, the diagnostics, and the completion based on which version of Effect you are using. That gives you the ability to have projects that are slowly migrating towards one version of the other of Effect by still having both of them in different packages. You can have a monorepo that has a package that depends on Effect v3 and does the server, and instead you want to try Effect for the client with Effect v4, for example. And yes, it is already updated. You just need to bump to the latest version. And same for Effect Small. Whatever issue you find with the LSP regarding Effect Small, please report it to the LSP repository, not the Effect Small. We want to keep the Effect Small repository just for the actual runtime. And yeah, you should be basically up and running about that. But maybe next time we will cover like a few more things about that.
I think it's super impressive how Mattia was able to ship LSP support for v4 in a relatively short time frame when we told him that beta was coming out and we needed it.
I was already preparing for it. I was like, I always had my door open, saying, I was always looking out of the door and say, hey, are you coming? Not yet. Not yet.
Well, kudos. Yeah, and exactly. Mike has said that. It was like last week. I told everybody, I was like, all right, folks, time to get V4 into beta. So anyway, yeah, at the beginning of this migration document, it kind of goes over in v3, services were defined using context.tag, context.generic tag, effect.tag, or effect.service. In v4, all of these have been replaced by service map.service. There's one thing. Context is renamed to service map, and yeah, so everything just service map.service. You can bind it to a constant the same way you did with context.generic tag. You can use a constant, or you can use class-based services. So I sort of glossed over that to answer Tija's question, but yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mattia.
No,
ahead.
you were about to cover what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's mixed opinions on accessors, and for folks who don't know what accessors are, in V3, we played around with multiple different APIs for this, but basically, when you want to call a method on a service, you need to access that service and then call the method on that service, right? So you would do like yield notifications, and then you would say notifications.notify. Accessors allow us to like have a helper thingy that allows you to directly call methods on a service. But there are a lot of problems with this.
Yeah.
No, the first problem isn't even a technical problem. It's more of like a footgunny problem, which is that the second you call an accessor, this program now has a type of effect, whatever notifications, right? The service gets immediately leaked into the effect that is being called. And it's a foot gun in the sense that if you do this within another service's method, that service's method gets that requirement, and it's just a mess. So
you're leaking the
we
implementation.
decided
You're basically
yeah,
leaking
exactly.
the implementation in the shape of the service, whereas the shape of the service should be just what you do and not what it requires to do it.
Did we ever get an either to result? Yeah, we can talk about that too at some point. Yes, either is renamed to result. Tej, accessors are like necklaces or bracelets? Yes, exactly,
Yes,
Tej.
definitely those one.
Good job. That is perfect. So besides the like more practical limitations, there were also technical limitations of accessors, specifically effect.tag or effect.service accessors. So like accessors that we would automatically generate for you. Under the hood, this used like a proxy to do the magic, and this is really like problematic from a TypeScript perspective, because the second you use an accessor, generic parameters get erased. So
also some kind of overloads gets like messed up as well.
Exactly, yeah. Like service overloads, like overloads get messed up, generics get erased. So like you'd have a method that looks like this on your service, and instead when you access it through the accessor proxy, it would collapse to this, and you'd end up with unknown.
Yeah. The generics.
Yeah. Overloaded signatures were not preserved. So in V4, we've removed accessors entirely. And the most direct replacement for using accessors is this new automatically available property on a tag, which is use. So use accesses the service and then allows you to call methods on that service, and it returns like the it allows you to like get this type in the program that you return back, right? So instead of being implicit, which is what happens here, we have implicit accessing of the service and then using a method on that service. We've decided to make it explicit. And there's two methods. There's use, which takes an effectful callback, meaning you get to like call something that might return an effect. And then there's also use sync, which allows you to have a pure callback. So some services in effect have methods that do not return an effect, right? Like sometimes you have a method on your service that returns just a pure value. It would be kind of annoying if every time you wanted to use an accessor thingy, you had to then do like effect.succeed my pure value. So instead, we also have a use sync method that just allows the thing to be synchronous as well. So like if you have, for example, a service that has like a port property on it, you can use sync to get access to the port. And this is the type of the signature. I have to leave early. I wish I could stay for the 24-hour stream. I wish I could stay for the 24-hour stream. Who's doing that?
Not me.
That this all being said about use and accessors and blah 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 blah, we wanted to support the use case, but in reality, we still recommend yielding or like directly like accessing the service and then calling methods. In most cases, over use. And while use is convenient, it still has that same like practical problem of making it being prone to leaking dependencies into the shape of your service. So we still recommend like the pattern of like yielding your service first and then calling methods on it.
Now that you mentioned, we could probably have a rule in the LSP. You can opt in and say no use and no use sync.
We could probably add an LSP rule for that. Opt in though.
Yeah, opt in. Yeah.
I could see that. I could see the people being like,
What? Yeah, opt in, obviously.
And then another, this is more of a controversial thing, I guess, at this point in time, maybe. But Effect.Service doesn't exist anymore for now. And the reason is several-fold. We have removed Effect.Service because I mean, the easy explanation is that there was way too much magic happening under the hood with Effect.Service. There are a lot of practical reasons why we removed Effect.Service, and it may reappear again in the future. But in V4, we were really striving to reduce the multiple ways to do the same thing problem, right? So we did successfully, like, got the number of ways to create a service down from like 4 different methods to 1. But there was still this problem of like there are features of Effect.Service that people like. So the compromise we currently have is, Effect.Service automatically generated a default layer, and you could wire dependencies in, for example. And so logger.default in this case would be auto-generated and would give you a layer with your logger that already had config wired in. In V4, the service map.service method can take an optional make constructor. And what's nice about make is, if you look at here, let's go back to like one of these simpler definitions.
Database, yeah.
When you define your database up front, the second type parameter is required if you do not pass a make constructor in. However, if you pass make, if you provide a default constructor for your service in V4, you only need the first type parameter because it'll infer the shape of your service from the second. You can have both, right? You can put the shape of your service in here and then make sure that you return the right type. But anyway, service map.service takes a make constructor that allows you to create a default implementation of your service, but there are no automatically like generated layers or a layer without dependencies, blah, blah, blah. You build them yourself. So you can either attach them statically to the tag like some people like to do, or you can have them as module level layers, whatever. But we don't do any magic for generating layers under the hood. So this is our compromise for the moment. We are doing some explorations. I think it was Kit who opened a pull request a while back about like looking into, where was it? I don't know if we closed that PR. Maybe we did. There was somewhere where we were looking at like potentially like having some helpers around generating layers, but in reality, like we think that being explicit and trying to reduce the number of ways to do the same thing, being explicit is going to be better in the long term. And this also has kind of like the added benefit that like LLMs are much better at doing this than trying to make them understand the magic of Effect.Service. Like they're much better at like seeing explicit patterns. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of like the rationale
One way to
behind why
rule them
we
all.
did this. Yeah. Service map.service. That's all you need to know, right? Like it is much easier to just have a single way to do the same thing. Now, in V3, we also had references, which are services that have default implementations, and we still have that in V4. So instead of context.reference, it's service map.reference, and you provide like a default value in here. And we can talk a little bit more maybe about this. It seems like people want us to keep going. So Mattia, if you're good to keep going for a little bit, I am. Otherwise, you can feel free to. I know it's later where you are, so feel free to hop off whenever you need to. But
Okay.
If we take a quick peek at why this is relevant. So in V3, there was this type, this little known type that people may or may not have used for certain things, called a FiberRef. And this type was kind of there to allow us to have fiber local state, but in reality, like, it was over-engineered for the use case that we had in mind, and most people didn't use the other features of FiberRef that existed. So most people were only using FiberRef for the fact that it could hold a default value. But FiberRef could do some other things in V3, like it could allow you to update the value of the FiberRef, like when you join two fibers together. And there were other things that you could do with FiberRef, but even we found almost no use cases for that. So we removed FiberRef in V4. So FiberRef, FiberRefs patch. I think differ still exists. This may be a mistake. Might have to correct it. Let me check.
I think differ still exists, but
yeah, differ still exists.
Yeah, it still exists, but it was used only for the patching mechanism of the FiberRefs in V3, and now it's like also used. I think now differ is there for JSON patch generation in Schema. I think.
Yeah.
Or
I think this is more of just
an
interface.
Yeah, exactly.
So like all the logic that existed in differ is gone. And instead, everything is now handled by service map.reference. So we scroll down. To read a FiberRef, you'd have to like FiberRef.get and then pass in the FiberRef you wanted to read. Now you just yield the service like you would normal other services. So because a service map.reference is just a service with a default value, you don't have to learn another concept. You just like access it like you would any other service. Effect.locally was like a way where you could take a FiberRef and update it just for a particular effect. So here we're taking like the current log level FiberRef, updating the log level to debug just for this effect. But again, this requires you to kind of like learn another concept, figure out like, okay, what does locally do with the FiberRef? How do I understand? Now you can just, yeah, it's like there's no reason for it to be this complex. Now you just, the same way you would override a service for a particular effect any other way, you just do the same thing, but instead with like the reference service. So here, if we want to override the current log level for my effect, you would just do it this way. I think we have helpers around this too, like the same way we did in V3, but this is just like an example of how you could override a FiberRef. And again, in V3, FiberRef set mutated the FiberRef's value. In V4, they're set via provide service. So like here, setting the FiberRef actually like updates this value. In V4, it's again, you just normal service semantics hold. So if you change the value of a service for this effect, it's just going to exist for this effect. So is log level not a thing anymore? It is, but we simplified it. It is now just, I think, a string. I think. Wait, I might be wrong. Hang on.
well, it's just a string now.
I think it's still a structured object, but oh yeah, it is just a string.
Yes.
I lied. We tried to make log like, is the log level string type safe? Yes, it's type safe. It's just a union of literals. We can talk more about logging maybe another time, because we also we made logging a lot simpler, and we made it a lot simpler to override like loggers and update the loggers in your application and whatnot. The last thing I want to mention related to services and FiberRefs, etc., is runtime. So the runtime module still exists, but the runtime type has been removed in V4. That's because in V3, a runtime was literally just like a container for your context, runtime flags, which don't exist in V4 anymore, and FiberRefs, which don't exist in V4 anymore. So this, because now a runtime is just this, we just decided to get rid of runtime. And now a runtime is just your services. The runtime module now just exists to allow producing like a run main function. So like in the node runtime, for example, we use the runtime module helpers to produce node runtime.runMain. So yeah, I'll try to, for the folks talking about loggers in the chat, I will try to produce a migration guide for logger specifically, so you folks can see the differences. But yeah, I wanted to talk about like the changes to services, because I thought that it was pretty relevant to what we were already chatting about.
It's probably one of the most relevant changes in V4, but also one of the best changes in V4, I think.
It's definitely one of the bigger simplifications we've made in V4. Trying to like, again, there were some like unifying principles we had with V4 development. One was making it smaller, one was making it faster, and one was making it simpler. So trying to reduce the same ways to do the same thing. This kind of goes in that bucket. So yeah. Any other questions that folks have? I'm happy to stay on. I know it's getting late for Mattia, so like I said,
I'm fine again.
Okay. You no just problems. Yell at me when you need or want to leave. I don't want to hold you hostage, but
no, I think that I was.
Do folks want to talk about logger like right now? Any peer dependencies removed? It's like 5 p.m. in EU. Well, depending on where you are, I guess that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I don't like to make any assumptions. Are there any peer dependencies removed? I think we've tried to shift any external dependencies that we can into like the provider and technology specific packages like platform and the AI providers, etc. I don't know if we've like.
I know for sure that we introduced a couple of types only dependency that are used. For example, we have.
Yeah, like I know we have a few dependencies here that are relevant for some of the unstable modules.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I think we've cleaned up peer deps, and I think most of them now live in like provider and technology specific packages, but
which again leans more towards the idea of having like packages that are the kernel of your application that's set up, so you need for all of your environment, whereas the effect package is where the actual business logic happens and the service contracts lives in.
Guys, we're not doing a cluster intro right now. That can be like a future office hours. It's like That's like a whole 2-hour thing.
Yeah.
We can talk about some of the smaller features. We can talk, yeah, Mike in chat. Why not?
Why not? We can go maybe through some of the other like changes that happened. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mattia.
I was saying one huge change that we didn't cover, I think, is yieldability versus subtyping.
Oh, good call. Good call. This is another.
That's one I love, and that's one I know that people probably initially may say, huh, why? But trust me, it's a really good one.
We can talk about logger and potentially either to results in a second. Does Effect.4 support multi-threading via workers and such? No, the runtime will always be single-threaded. There's integration with workers, just like in V3, but the Effect Fiber runtime cannot be it's not a multi-threadable thing. I mean, I guess it's technically possible, but that's not the design goal.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe it's not technically possible. I don't know. Mike can chime in and yell at me. So to talk about like what Mattia was chatting about yieldability. So in V3, a lot of types were structural. It's not technically possible, Max.
No, I think that you can't because you need like a contract to properly like serialize and deserialize values as they pass their threads, and that's not possible because you don't have a type system in JavaScript, so you cannot like infer that in any way. That's one of the problems.
You would need a protocol up front, which is what the worker modules in effect allow you to do.
Yeah.
Build your own protocol, but we can't like have a generic one for the fiber. It just doesn't work.
That's the point. Yeah.
Especially because you can't serialize methods. Yeah. So there would be like no way for us to do that.
Yeah, and also like
Mike says you would need shared memory and sync primitives, which we don't have.
If you want, I can go. Yeah, I was saying that if you want, I can go over, so you can take like a quick break about. You have been like.
I appreciate it very much. You do this one.
I don't want like so in V3 like we had a lot of data types in the effect package, like we mentioned here in this slide. We had like ref, we had fibers, we had either, we had option, we had exits. We have a lot of data types that were actually subtypes of effect. What that means is that basically whenever you had things like, for example, an option, you can have that option, but that option is as well at the same time.
Oh, sorry. You gotta. I don't know if your mic is far away from you or not. Sorry. But it got quieter.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's better now.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So I was saying that in Effect v3, most of the data types have been subtypes of effect. So that means that things like option, either, or FiberRefs, or whatever, behind the scene, they were also an effect. So that means that you can, for example, do things like option.sum and pipe that into effect.flatmap, and you will get automatically an effect that had the typed option as a success and introduced automatically things like no such exception in your error channel. And while this sounds great because you can say, hey, I can have whatever be an effect, that causes problem with flattering. Because now if you do things like effect.flatmap, option.sum, now you get in trouble because now you are basically flat mapping an effect that has the value and no such element exception. So that is kind of unclear, I would say. Some people probably wouldn't see that, but initially it is unclear. Also, like I've responded to a lot of people saying, I have an effect, I have an exit, I have an option, I have an either. How do I convert those into an effect? And they were already effect, right? And that was in V3. Whereas in V4, we opted to yieldability. So that means that now those values, like your option we mentioned before, they are not an effect by default. If you want to have them as effects, you need to properly say dot as effect. And that will basically convert your option in the same structure you had before as an effect that succeeds with the number and can fail with no such element exception. Okay? So you still have this escape edge. But if you have been yielding that option inside of effect generator, they still behave the same way. Because in v4, we opted for yieldability. So whatever implements the effect yieldable interface can be yielded and produce values, errors, and introduce requirements. But it is not an effect subtype by default. And that avoids, as I mentioned before, things like auto-flattening that's kind of messing up mentally with you, what you were thinking. So it is, in my opinion, a more stricter approach, which I personally like more. Someone may say, yeah, it was nice before to do just option.sum.pipe effect flatman, whatever, but it introduces a lot of risk at type level.
Yeah, that was a really good summary. I think like exactly what Mattia said, like just to point out some concrete code examples, like what Mattia was saying. This is, I think, a really good example of what he was referring to in V3, where you can like use effect combinators on like option and ref and deferred or whatever. And this is like nice, but it's also hides subtle bugs like Mattia was referring to, right? Like there's what if you want to work with this option?
What if you don't
Right,
want
like,
the no such element error?
Right. What if you want this to be an effect option number that you map? It's like very difficult to do this in V3. You need multiple combinators to get this back to an option of number, and it's annoying. So it's a very subtle class of bugs that can happen. That even like we encountered after we introduced these changes. So Mattia mentioned that like there's no such, we don't have effect subtyping is not a thing except for exit in V4. And instead, we've replaced subtyping with this yieldable trait, which is a much like narrower contract that allows you to like yield certain types and generators. And you can implement this for your own types if you want to, right? If you implement yieldable for a custom type, then that type becomes yieldable in generators. But it does not make the type assignable to effect. So again, in V3, this is possible. In V4, you explicitly have to do that transformation, like Mattia was saying, with dot as effect. But you can still yield the option if you want to. So,
so if you have been a nice guy and using effect.gen, effect.fn, and family.
Mattia, you are so much quieter for me, and I can't figure out why. Is Mattia quieter for anybody else, or is it just me? Like, it might just be me. I don't know. My streaming setup
I may need to adjust my microphone.
When will the V4 beta docs be available, or an LLM.txt for V4? I don't know. I mentioned would say before that we're working on documentation. We're it's a focus of ours moving into the beta. We don't have any timeline, but we are rebuilding the docs site basically from the ground up. So stay tuned, but we don't have any timeline on an official docs like website for V4. We can probably get API documentation starting to be published if it's not already. I don't think I can't remember if we have DocGen set up to publish the API docs for V4 yet. So we can certainly get that set up, so at least there's API docs rolling out. Yeah, so this is like, I agree with Mattia. This is like such a nice, it seems so dumb, and it also seems like maybe we're removing functionality, but this is such a subtle,
so nice. Yeah,
it's such a subtle set of bugs that can happen. And so like just by having to make this explicit, it removes that whole class of bugs. And you still retain the ability to like do this in generators, which is really nice. So
I would say that you don't feel our nice ideas until you get hit by trying to find in like a quite medium-sized effect composition which of the member is introducing the no such element except error.
Yeah. Yep.
And until you get into that situation, you don't get the feel of like how nice this changes.
I should also mention that that related to error handling, a lot of the catch handlers have been renamed. So we tried to do this around semantic like renaming. So like catch all's now just catch. Catch all cause is just catch cause. Catch all defect is now catch defect, because in V3 this name right here got us into a lot of trouble.
Catch
People
all.
were like,
All
"Well,
what?
you're catching all. Why aren't you catching everything?" Have ensure success type and ensure error type been removed? If they're not there, North Rock, if they're not there, just open an issue for us. They shouldn't be removed. They should exist. So if they don't, just feel free to open an issue. Did catch reason make it in? Yes, it is in here. I can talk about catch reason potentially. What I don't like as much is that I now have to create new effects and callback functions. That seems like useless object instantiation over and over again. Previously, I was able to create effect once. I don't really understand that. I think I would probably need a code example to understand what you mean there. There shouldn't be any need to create more.
I think that even like you don't need like to create more, because like if you previously have them like being instantiated once, I think that you can mostly apply the same pattern even now here. What you just would need is like your as effect method is basically just catching and producing always the same value.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on what you mean, Space Motion, about like where the difference is between V3 and V4 related to this. Maybe Mike can solve the problem here while I continue to talk about catch. So anyways, this name got us into a lot of problems because people assumed that this caught everything, but in reality, catch all only caught expected errors. So anyways, now catch all is catch all cause is catch cause, which will catch all causes, and catch all defect catches defects. Catch sum is now called catch filter, and catch sum cause is now catch cause filter. We removed catch sum defect because it didn't really make a lot of sense semantically. So anyways, there's some like migration information in here. But in V4, there's also this new pattern that we've introduced where you can have an error that has a reason field on it, and that allows you to catch a specific reason within a tagged error. And there's a reason. There's a reason why we did this. It came out of us working on the AI SDK for Effect and being really dissatisfied with the AI error type. So one of my goals with redesigning the Effect AI SDK was that I wanted the error types to be much more rich. I wanted people to be able to understand like what exactly happened. So I wanted to have like very granular error cases that were produced when you were running LLM interactions. Like if you hit a rate limit, or if you hit a content policy error, or if you hit like I don't know, a network error. I wanted all of these things to be very clear in the error that you get back. But I did not want to blow up your error channel. The problem is that like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So AI error being a union of all of these different things meant that anytime you used an LLM interaction, like generate text or whatever, you would get all these errors blowing up your error channel. And we wanted to try to quote unquote fix a lot of the other internal frameworks that we built as well to have more granular error cases. So like CLI still needs a lot of work on its error cases and the platform errors and things like that. So instead, we came up with this concept of like errors that can have a reason on them. So if I scroll down to here, AI error is now, hang on, here. So AI error is now an object that has some information on it that's global to every AI error, right? The module and the method that caused the error. And then there's also this like reason field in here. And AI error reason is a union of every single reason that is applicable here. The benefit of this is that in the error channel, you'll only see AI error, but you still get access to all of the very granular information that these individual reasons allow you to have. Previously, some of the other frameworks like the platform modules had like a reason tag that was like a literal, and you could like say system error or bad argument error or something, and then the actual like cause of the error, you could even if you discriminated on the reason, you then lose all of like the rich context of what actually happened, because the error, you discriminating on the reason doesn't narrow like the actual error that happened if it's just included alongside the object. But with this, you still retain the reason inside AI error. And you may be saying, okay, well, this is great, but now I need to just like go another level deep to get access to what's going on. So there, the reason that the reason pattern that we're introducing is useful is because we introduced a set of combinators that are meant to work alongside this. So if we go to Effect, and we go to catch reason. So I think this little JS doc shows it off a little bit. But basically, let's say like we have an AI error that is a much simpler version of what we showed before that has like a rate limit error and a quota exceeded error. And you have a program that just has AI error in your error channel, which is nice. That's what we want, right? We want the error channel to not blow up with like 20 different errors, but we still want you to get access to really granular information. Well, we introduced this catch reason combinator. So you can catch first the tag of the parent error, then the tag of the reason that occurred, and then you can run a callback based on that reason, right? So we can now execute some logic based on the rate limit error. The downside of this pattern, while it's great, right? Because you can just have like a bunch of catch reasons, or there's also a catch reasons combinator, the same thing as catch tags. There's catch reasons, so you can catch multiple reasons at once. The downside of this pattern is that there's no way for us to remove that individual reason from the AI error type. So we can't erase that error case from the error channel. So one of the other things we're considering is like, the thought process here is like, most of the time when you're running LLM interactions, you're going to know which cases you can handle and which cases you can't. So you would run catch reasons to catch all the different things you can actually handle in your app, and then you would just die with the AI error after that. I don't know if we introduced it or not yet, but to do this specifically, to die specifically with an AI error after catching different reasons, we're considering adding an or die tag combinator. I don't know if we did this yet, but or die tag would allow you to catch reasons on your AI error and then run effect.or-die tag AI error, so that this way you handle all the reasons you can, and then you just die with any other AI errors that happen. And then the last thing that's nice about this is like, let's say that there's a case where you want to blow up the error channel, like you actually want to like unwrap the AI error. Well, we introduced a unwrap reason combinator, which takes in a error that has a reason and unwraps it into the individual reasons. So in this case, you would do unwrap reason AI error, and then you would get back an effect that has all the reasons lifted into the error channel. So if you really did want to make sure you erased all of the different potential cases, this is one way you could do it. You could like unwrap the reasons and then catch tag on the individual reasons. So again, the thought process here was we wanted to make errors coming from our internal frameworky packages like the AI SDKs and the CLI packages, etc., much more rich in context for you, because Effect bills itself as this wonderful production grade framework. And to that end, we should be giving you as much information as we can about handling errors. So anyway, this was the pattern we landed on to kind of get the best of all worlds. The only real trade-off with this is that catch reason can't erase errors from here because there's no way to do that in TypeScript. Somebody mentioned, so it turns out this is a typed hierarchy of errors. In a way, yes. It's more of like a container for a set of potential errors. However, the hierarchy could go n levels deep in theory, right? You could theoretically have nested reasons. So anyway, I talked a lot about errors. I know there were like 6 people that asked us to talk about Logger. So maybe we can talk about that next. There's no migration guide for this yet, but Mike and I actually, this was Mike's one major contribution to Effect v4. The only thing he put his hands on, folks. You heard me say it here first. This is the only thing that Mike laid his hands on in Effect v4. Everything else was done by the rest of us. I'm just kidding. Where is Logger? Mike and I, one afternoon, this was months ago, one afternoon worked together to fix Logger. Let me see. Okay. Let's see if we can look at an example here. Okay, so in Effect v4, if you want to create a layer with multiple loggers in it, you would just call logger.layer. And maybe it's actually easier if I just open a terminal and show some code, because it's not really going to mean anything without
seeing.
I can see all my panicked commits from trying to get v4 to publish.
Last minute ship to production.
Let me do this, and then I'll share my screen. Stop. Screen. Window. Ghosty. Is this the right one? I think so. Let me zoom in. Okay. Oh, I need to clean up my scratch pad. Logger. So let's import effect and let's import logger. So the logger module in v4 has been kind of reorganized. So in the logger module now, we have the loggers themselves are named without the layer prefix. I think this is how we did this. Oh no, I think we actually just made everything loggers. Yes, okay. And I remember now. It's all coming back. So when Mike and I worked on this, originally we had all the individual loggers like console JSON, console log format, console pretty, console structured. And then we also had layers to go along with all of them. And then you had to like do the same dance of like replacing the loggers that existed, et cetera, but we really weren't satisfied with that API. It kind of, as most of you know from v3, the replacing loggers and like adding loggers to your program, those APIs kind of suck. So in v4, we wanted to simplify it. So let's say that we want to create a layer that adds, I don't know, Mattia, what loggers do you want to add
I want
to our program?
a pretty logger, but I also want to log it as JSON.
Okay, so we're gonna have a pretty logger and a JSON logger.
Yeah.
We'll put both of them. We'll do console for both of them. So in Effect v3, you had to like, first you had to replace the default logger, and then you had to add the second logger to your loggers, and everything was layer, and it was really annoying. In Effect v4, logger layer, or maybe we can say layer logger, since this is kind of the pattern we're trying to introduce now. Layer is like a prefix for layers. In Effect v4, you just call logger.layer, and you pass in an array of loggers. And that's it.
Whoa.
And you may be asking me, or maybe thinking, well, what if my logger is produced effectively? Well, that's fine. Logger.layer supports both loggers directly and effects that produce loggers.
Nice.
And then you may also be asking, you may also be thinking, well, what if I want to make sure this is merged with any existing loggers or replace the existing loggers? That's fine. There's an options object, merge with existing. You can set it to true. And then this will get merged with any existing loggers in the program already. So this layer would get merged with any existing loggers. So you could have theoretically, like, I don't know, many of these different layers in your program. And as long as you set merge with existing true, then it will merge with the existing loggers. I think it's set to true by default. We should probably document that. Or maybe it's set to false by default. Hang on. It's false by default. I think. Yes.
Yeah, it's false by default. Which kind of makes sense, because if now you are providing a layer with loggers, and that kind of like replace the loggers of your application. And yes, Mike, this is the most genius thing in Effect v4.
Mike chiming in with, this is the most genius API of Effect v4. Clearly, the only API that Mike actually touched. So this is literally all you need now, is logger.layer and the loggers you want to add to your program. And then, like, you know, provide layer logger effect.run promise.
And now we just need a program. Oh, well, my fault.
Why is this telling me it's not used? I want to start a tmux session, and I want to go back in, and I want to go to Scratchpad. So, oh, this is probably something that we should mention somewhere in the migration docs, maybe like front and center. Effect v4 is ESM only. we are dropping support for CJS.
Oops.
I repeat, Effect v4 is ESM only. We're only publishing ESM compatible packages.
Yep. Ring the bells and turn on the alarms.
So now you see,
yes.
we get both the pretty logging, and then we also get JSON logging, because they've both been added to our program.
Just want to say that Tej just said, didn't he just say dropping support for Tej.js?
That's right. We're dropping support for Tej.
Tej.
Tej is not allowed to write effect anymore, starting with v4. Sorry, Tej. My bad.
But you can still allow LLMs do it for your belief.
Yeah, so logging got much simpler. At least adding loggers and changing loggers and everything like that should be much simpler now. But like, the loggers in your program, if you look at the implementation under the hood, you'll notice that it is delegating to this current loggers thing, which is just a reference, a service map reference. So if you wanted yourself to modify that reference directly, you can do it with just provide service, just like we showed in the migration docs. References.current logger. I think it actually might be some in the logger module. Logger. Need to probably put this in the references module too. And then you would just put your loggers in here, right? So like everything that was previously FiberRefs now just builds on top of the concept of like services, and is much simpler.
So that way, for example,
changing my name to Kit Langdon V4.
So I was saying that taking advantage of that pattern, for example, we can have one of the logs provide only a different logger, and we will have one of the two effect log run only with the pretty one, for example, and the other one running with both of them, which are the defaults. The same. I've seen a question asking that, but yeah.
All right.
It's an array, yeah. You need to make an array as parameter. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And this should, if we run this now, our first log is only logged with the log format logger. And then the second one is logged with both. So again, this is just like standard service provision to override like outer services. Like there's no new concepts that need to be introduced here. There's just what you already know about effect services you can use to apply to services that have a default. All right, there was a question about either and result, and I think that actually leads into another question about this new filter module that we have. So yes, there is a new filter module in Effect v4 that allows us to represent a filter function that can transform inputs. So in Effect v3, there were like all these different overloads, or not overloads, different methods for filtering. There was like filter, which took predicates and refinements. There was filter map, which allowed you to pass in a method that you could then use an option to like map the value and also filter stuff out. In v4, we're doing our best to try to consolidate. By the way, Tej says, by the way, for the YouTube video follow-up of this, I would definitely splice this VOD up into each of the different topics and then release them separately with individual titles. Would help people find the stuff they're looking for. Tej, that is wonderful feedback. Thank you very much. I will pass it along to our video editing team.
Thank you very much.
A team of one.
It's still a team.
It's just him. No, I'm just kidding. It's Davide is like the best.
Yeah.
Davide is our video editor. He's fantastic. You should all give him kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah, so filtering is basically a way for us to allow where we can consolidation of these filtering methods. So if we maybe go back to my example here, maybe we can adjust this program to remove everything about logging for now. Oops. So, what was I going to say? Filtering, right?
Filtering, yeah.
So you'll notice that on these filter methods, there are several, just a few overloads.
Just a couple, you know.
So let's say we have an effect on program, the greatest number. And we want to filter this, and we want to say
is even, is odd.
Sure. I actually had to think about that one. Why is this not working? All right.
It's some string, yeah.
So this won't work. You like if you just pass in a predicate or refinement, it will work, right? Why is this giving me a problem? The left-hand side of an arithmetic operation must be. Somebody help me. I'm sleep deprived. Wait, what? Why is this an effect?
I would just try to oh, it's an effect.
Somebody help me.
Filter.
Oh, I don't know if I like this API. Okay, whatever. Let's just do it this way then.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Anyway, so let's say we have this predicate in here, and this is fine. This will work. It's not going to do anything. So this will like filter down our collection. Effect v5 incoming.
Effect v5, yeah.
That's right. Effect v5 incoming. So predicates work, refinements work, but if we wanted to map this at the same time that we filter, we can't do that. In v3, we would have to use another method like filter map to do that. But in v4, the filter module allows us to do this. I forget the exact syntax of this, so help. Please give me 1 second. I think I can just do. So result is the new either. I think I can just do this. Result.succeed even. Actually, fail.
Fail, yeah.
And I think I need to wrap this into an effect. This is probably not the most wonderful example of this. Why is, okay, now my auto formatting is gone. Okay. You can just pass a result.succeed, result.fail. Can I? I don't know, Mike.
Doesn't seem so right now. We will double check this one.
Property pipe doesn't exist on element. Am I missing a paren? No. Well, in any case, we'll have to check the overloads and stuff. But anyway, the idea with like the idea with filters is that you can consolidate some of the APIs that previously required other methods to work. So like beta issues. Am I like missing a parenthesis? No.
It's fine.
So like instead of having filter and filter map and all of these other different APIs, we can unify into this like either accepting a predicate or a refinement or a filter. So previously where you'd have to do like filter map and then do like option.sum and then option.none, right? Instead, we can use lean into result have a single method, and this should hopefully work. Yeah. So the idea being like, again, consolidation, trying to keep the API surface more focused, smaller, allowing you to do things in a more semantic way. So filter, like the filter module and filter functions in general. Maybe I can just do filter. Make. Will this work? Does it have to be an effect? Oh, whatever. The result API is probably my favorite. Okay. The idea being that like with the introduction of like a filter module, we can express these different types of filter operations in a cleaner way. And like this module has some, I think it's an overload missing. I think you're right. I of course picked the one method where we forgot to add an overload.
There's missing the filter.filter overload. Yeah.
But you can see like you can create filters ahead of time and then use them, and they're composable. And that's kind of like a very nice property here. You can create effectful filters as well that are reusable. So like this module allows you to kind of abstract the concept of filtering and allow it to become composable. So you can build up filters ahead of time. So if you want to do something more complex than just using a predicate, you can lift those things into like filters and compose those together. So that's the filter module. And then the result module is the replacement for either. And I actually really like the fact that we leaned into results for v4 over either, because I think it's much more semantic. Either was used very frequently for expressing results, and that really didn't make a ton of sense because, like, I don't know, it's not a result. Instead, in v4, we renamed or refactored either into this result module, which is much more like semantic about expressing like an actual result. So anyway, for folks who are curious, feel free to explore the module, but it should feel pretty similar to either. You can express the same type of discriminated union between two results as you would with an either. Let's see if there are any questions. Luak says, where can I get the hat that says effect or die? Ooh, that was an exclusive. I'm sorry. That was an oh, wait, actually, hang on.
That's an exclusive, you know? You need to be there from the beginning to have it.
The OG.
The OG, yeah, the OG one.
It looks like Mirella was kind enough to create a V4 beta channel for us in Discord. So for anybody who has questions or wants to discuss V4, feel free to do it there. Let's see if did we miss any questions, Mattia?
I don't think so. I was looking into them, but I don't think so.
Carlos Cheetah says, can I define a logger layer which merges with existing and then later choose whether to use that one or another? For example, my programs decide whether to use that one or another.
And that's what we have seen.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did before. You would use standard service semantics to do that. So on the layer API level, you can either choose to merge with existing or not. And then you would provide like deeper the loggers that you want to use. Oh, that's actually a good point. In v4, this maybe isn't something we should advertise, but in there's a huge footgun that a lot of people run into in v3, where I see this happen like all the time. Let's just get like a pipeline going. I see this.
Oh yeah.
And this is like a huge anti-pattern.
Yeah.
Right, into v3 for numerous reasons, but the biggest reason being that multiple effect.provides disconnect the layer graphs from one another in effect v3, meaning that the layer passed to this provide is disconnected from this one. So you don't get the benefits of sharing the same scope, deduplication and memoization of layers. Like it's a foot gun, which we try to solve with the LSP. Because I think the LSP does give an error now, the effect LSP.
Yeah, if
right?
you have like, you need to pass proper arguments in the provide.
But I don't want to.
Layer.empty. You can provide layer.empty and should work.
Oh.
Oh no. That's. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
The proper thing to do here would be to extract these in v3. Would be to extract these layers, merge them together ahead of time, and then have a single provide. But in v4, Tim, for feedback on v4 Discord or open issue PR, please open issues and PRs if the feedback is related to like an actual issue or a bug or something like that. For API level feedback, that can be in either place. We may choose to accept it or we may not. But if there's an actual issue or bug or missing API, definitely open an issue. Anyway, in v4, Tim, the illustrious Tim, enabled sharing of memo maps between separate provides, which means that in v4, technically, this is not a problem anymore. You can just effect.provide to your heart's content. Now, having said that, like we still recommend not doing this. But yeah, that foot gun is by default not really a problem anymore, which is good. So the memo map that's created behind the scenes by these provides, which is the thing that allows us to deduplicate and memoize layers, is shared between provides. If you want to disable that functionality, there's an option to do so. You just set local true, which means that this layer is now like local. And really what this option is for like, if you had like an inner effect, like this, where you were effect.providing something, and you wanted this to like take precedence and be totally disconnected from the layer graph that exists, then you could do this. But yeah, by default, multiple effect.provides all share the same layer graph now, which is pretty nice.
It's not recommended, but it's still like a safety net.
100% not recommended. You should be composing your layer graph ahead of time and providing it once. But in situations where you forget to do that, or you're not using the LSP because you're crazy and you don't get a warning about it, then we try to have your back.
Ideally, like using effect provide with a layer should happen ideally only once in your entire application, ideally. Only at the edge of your application. That's one way to see it, because that's like the location where you construct all of your dependencies and you chain them together. But yeah, again, that's a safety net. Whereas before in v3 you would have like weird issues that maybe you do not catch, you not understand why, because scopes get closed and reopen new services and whatever. Now you get like the behavior you would expect by default.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more semantic now. So kudos to Tim for working on that. There was a question about getting started with Effect. Want to learn v4 directly? Is there a branch of the docs website repo for v4 or just the migration guides? For the moment, just the migration guides. We will try to publish API documentation at least. But the actual like docs website, we're going to be like rethinking from the ground up, because we know there's a lot of problems with the existing documentation. So we're going to take our time. with the Effect v4 docs. Any other questions?
This one got already addressed.
Things people are curious about.
Let me also scroll through what changed to see if there is something else worth mentioning. Oh, forking.
North Rock asks, are there any planned dates for going out of beta? No, we do not have any timeline for how long beta will last. It's kind of covered in my blog post, but the idea is that we want to take our time to get things right. So we're going to take our time. It's kind of like why we took a while to release the beta. We wanted to try to get things to a point where we felt like it was ready for folks ready to get into people's hands, ready to let people test. We're going to take the same amount of time in beta. So we have no concrete timeline. Sandro asks about optics. We can certainly look at that, although Julio has a very good document about optics.
Yeah, in the optic one. I think that one probably we didn't mention is the fiber keep alive mechanism. Or did we?
Fiber keep alive. Oh, good call. Good call. Maybe I'll cover that before I talk about optics.
Yeah, just because it's a quick one that we can look into.
I actually rewatched Mike's Effect Days 2025 V4 talk, and this was mentioned there, and that was like such a throwback. Okay. So migration. Are people already opening issues? Where we have a wonderful community of people who provide fantastic feedback, open good issues. I'm very grateful. You guys are the best. Let's talk about Fiber Keep Alive. We have a migration guide for this. It might be a little bit too verbose, but I will talk about it nonetheless. So the core idea here is that in v3, Effect's runtime didn't keep Node.js's process alive while fibers were suspended on different like async ops. So like if a fiber was waiting on an async op like a deferred.await, and there was no other work scheduled in the event loop, the program would literally the process would exit. So this program in v3 where we you could probably even visualize this in v3 without this little worker thingy here, but like if we delete this, right, and just say create a deferred and then await it, this would just exit immediately. The program would exit because there's no other work being done on the event loop. This actually may be incorrect. I think this will still exit immediately, but you could reduce this even to remove this worker, and if you just create a deferred and await it, the process would exit immediately. And that's because the event loop in Node would have nothing keeping it alive at this point. There's no pending work. The workaround for this in v3 was to use the Node runtime run main. Yeah, I kind of figured, Mike, that this was wrong as I'm reading it, because sleep would create a timer and keep the process alive. So actually the correct version of this is to delete the worker and just show that like creating a deferred and awaiting it exits the process immediately because there's no pending work in the Node event loop. To work around this, you would use the Node runtime, which did install a timer that held the process open until the root fiber completes. But in v4, these semantics change. So again, if you ignore this worker, just create a deferred and await it, the process will stay alive while waiting. There's no run main necessary, so you could just use run promise if you wanted to. We still recommend using run main for other reasons, but the idea here is that the previous behavior in v3 was kind of unexpected. Like you would expect that if you have something like a deferred and you're awaiting it, that would hold the process open until the deferred completes. So in v4, I think this was actually something else Mike touched. So we can give Mike credit for two things.
Yeah, I think in v4 that creates basically a fake timer in the scheduler that gets like refreshed, so that until you have effects running, ideally you keep your process running. So ideally in v4 that should not happen.
Yeah, I think it's actually a reference counted thing.
Yeah, so it should be a
track.
thing, yeah. It should be a reference counted timeout, I think.
Where is the fiber? Where's the fiber bin? Somebody also asked a really good question earlier about how we reduced bundle size for v4. Like, what strategy did we use? And there were a couple that we used to reduce bundle size. But one of the big, like, I'll call it like unlocks, but ad break FML. I can wait till the ad break's over on Twitch to talk about this, but
also Sebastian raised a good point that also Mike's pizza is also pretty good. So yeah,
Mike does make good pizza. I will give him that. Mike does make good pizza.
That's another credit for.
Let me see where the fiber runtime comes from. I think it literally comes from the effect. Sebastian, you're back. I waited for you. One of the ways that we were able to reduce bundle size in v4, I think the schedule module is actually a really good example of this, and I of course I say that because I'm the one who rewrote it. But one of the ways we were able to reduce bundle size is many modules in Effect v3 are what we call, like, they're pseudo initial encodings, right? And what that means is, like, you have a set of instructions that you build up, and then you need an interpreter to interpret those instructions. So, like, Effect itself is an initial encoding in v3. In v4, it still is technically an initial encoding, but it's a little bit more of a hybrid, I think. I have to look at the most recent iteration of the runtime, but schedule is a good example of a pseudo initial encoding from v3 that we actually changed to be what's called like a final encoding. And a final encoding, where is my schedule type? Where are you? Schedule variants. Where are you? It's not like a clean mapping, right? Because, like, there's still aspects of both in these modules. There's still aspects of, like, initial and final encodings. But if to try to, like, think about this a little bit more cleanly, you can think of, like, in v3, many modules were more along the lines of initial encodings, where you'd have a set of instructions, you pass them to an interpreter, that interpreter would interpret said instructions and produce the results, right? And schedule was a good example of this. You created a schedule, and then there was a schedule driver, which actually drove the schedule, right? Iterating through the steps of that schedule. And the driver would call next to go through each subsequent step of the schedule. But in v4, we've tried to get away from that a little bit with a lot of these modules and move more towards an final encoding, where the type itself knows how to drive itself, right? So the schedule itself registers steps, and these steps are just pull-based effects that can run. So it's not excuse me. It's not exactly like cleanly saying, oh, we swapped from initial to final encodings, but we did do more of this. And so that allowed us to reduce bundle size in a lot of different places, because we were able to not need the driver code for a lot of these data types anymore. So schedule no longer has like a schedule driver because the steps are encoded right onto the schedule itself. And another interesting one is this pull data type that now backs both schedule. So schedule is built on top of this pull data type, and streams are actually totally rewritten to be built on streams, channels, and syncs are all built on top of this pull data type. I think sync is as well. And the pull data type is just a generic representation of like a pull effect. So if we look at this, pull is just like an effect that can result with a value. It can fail with either an error or this like special cause.done value, or have some requirements. And so the schedule, if we go back to that, man, where's my step? From step. You'll notice that like we've got this outer effect that registers a function that returns a pull-based effect. And this type is a little bit confusing, but what it enables us to do is have like closures over the pull, so that any state we need to maintain can exist in this like closure, and it's like a little bit cleaner or more efficient than what we had to do previously with the driver-based implementation. So a good example of this is like, where can we go? We get past all these like step constructors. Trying to find like a clean example of this. Maybe like add delay. Add delay. Modify delay. All right, so this is not like a great example, but the idea is that like you encode directly onto the data type how it should execute. So the types and the like implementations may look a little bit different, or maybe to some folks might look a little confusing. But the idea is that like you can encode the behavior directly onto the data layer. Probably is actually, that's a good point, Mike. We re-encoded layer as well. Maybe layer is a better example. Let me see. So where are we? Where's the layer type? Yeah, so layer is a really good example actually of, this is probably a cleaner example of like straight up initial encoding to final encoding transformation. In V3, if I pull up like layer from V3, you're welcome, Mike. Thank you. Sometimes you have good ideas.
You meant Mike always had good ideas.
I meant what I said. If we look at layer from V3, you'll notice we might have to go to the internal implementation here. Yeah, we do. This is another thing, is the module structure in V4 is just like a lot cleaner for us as maintainers. But so in V3, you'll notice that the layer data type is a union of all of these different primitive instructions. It's like extend scope, fold, fresh, from effect, scoped, blah, 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 blah. So all of these different instructions are then executed by the build method So if we scroll down to like const build with scope, this thing delegates to this thing, delegates to make builder. And make builder is the thing that iterates through all of the different instructions and does stuff. So again, this is like layer was in v3 an initial encoding. You have many instructions that then have to be fed to an interpreter to be interpreted. In v4, if we go back to layer in v4, it's a pure initial encoding. Build is a method on the layer itself. There's no intermediate representation. The layer itself encodes how it should be built. So you get rid of all of the code related to the initial encoding. So substantially reduces the amount of code you have to write. And so now if you like look at, I don't know, let's see, maybe there's a combinator here. So here's like an example of like, you know, from build unsafe, you can get access. You can basically encode the build method directly onto the layer that you're producing here, right? You get a build function coming in. You can do all the things you need to do internally, and you encode the behavior onto the type itself. Streams were also refactored in this direction. So if we look at like not internal source,
we could generally say that. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mattia.
And I was saying that we could generally say that a lot of like initial encoding have now been replaced by a function that returns an effect or something like that. So as a final encoding.
Yeah, everything is kind of based on the effect type now, which just by doing that, like all of these ancillary data types, which previously required their own instructions, their own interpreter, etc., are now just based on effect. So the amount of code that has to be written to support that data type shrinks substantially because the basis of it is just effect. So channels, for example, are just transform methods that receive the upstream channel or the upstream pull and a scope and do something with it, right? So channels are just a sequence of transform functions that get executed. And you can, there's probably good examples in here of like how you can use these methods and build on top of them. But because everything is just basically built on top of effect now, instead of being its own initial encoding and having to be interpreted and having to write all the code for that, that by itself reduces bundle size. And then, of course, the other reason is that Tim is a machine and rewrote the whole Fiber runtime. He actually made micro from v3 more efficient than it already is, with more features and smaller for v4. So the Fiber runtime from v4, the v4 Fiber runtime was originally based on micro from v3, and then Tim basically made it smaller than that with more features supported and faster and more efficient. And so if you come in here and like look at all of the different stuff going on, I think it's in the effect module here. Yeah. The Fiber implementation you can see is here.
Now you can read the Fiber implementation in about like 2 screens. Before you couldn't.
Yeah. The run loop is much easier to reason about now than it was previously.
Yeah.
And I think Maxwell has the rare hat. Indeed, Johannes, I have the rare hat. There are only a select few that have the rare hat.
Now I want the rare hat as well.
Yeah, now you have to get the rare hat. There's also like a lot of smaller optimizations that we made along the way that are kind of interesting, but not really relevant for the end user. Like we in the Fiber, we have this like concept of Fiber middleware that you can attach to. So like, I forget exactly what this is used for, but there's certain stuff.
The Fiber middleware, I think it was used to conditionally inject the tracer only if it's actually used, if I recall correctly, or something like that.
Yes, I think you're right. There's a bunch of stuff that like, yeah. I think this is like, I forget exactly, but I think Mattia's right. You can.
I not recall if it's the tracer, but something like, I think it's the tracer, but I remember that there is something that is basically conditionally injected and bundled only if you like use certain features.
Here it
So
is.
they
Something
so
about interrupting
oh yeah.
children in fork child. Something, yeah. So like you can there's lots of optimizations that Tim made in here for like trying to make tree shaking work as best as possible as well. So you can actually like tree shake stuff from the runtime if it's not used, right? So like the interrupt children middleware is only added in fork child. So if you never use it's basically tree shaken if not used. So anyway, there's a lot of cool optimizations in here if anybody's curious. Guys, come back out of your nerd burrow. This whole stream is a nerd burrow.
Wasn't that the plan?
I thought so. Sebastian's yelling at me. I don't know. Forking combinators are renamed in v4 to try to express their semantics a bit better. So fork in v3 is now called fork child because you're forking a child of the current fiber. Fork daemon is renamed to fork detach because you're forking a fiber that's detached from the current fiber. So it's no longer attached to its parent's life cycle. Fork scoped is the same name because you're forking a fiber that's tied to the current scope. So the life cycle of the fiber you're forking is attached to the scope. And then fork in is the same. Fork all and fork with error handler are both removed. So there's like a few things in here. There's also options that these combinators take now that I don't think existed in v3. In v3, I don't think there was a clean way to start a fiber immediately. I think you had to like fork the fiber and then yield the parent fiber to get the child to run. So you had to like effect.yield now immediately after forking to allow the child to start if you wanted that behavior. But now you can pass options to all these fork combinators. So start immediately will make sure the forked fiber begins executing immediately. You can also control how interruption works for the child. But yeah. So
but
this
yeah,
is kind of
also their names are really great because like they now like conceive more what they actually do. Before like people were abusing kind of like fork daemon and whatever, and now it's really clear what they do. So if you opt to use fork detached, you know that it will be detached, so it won't get interruption, it won't get whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to reason about. Did I actually put a migration guide in about effect.provide? I did. Wow. Look at me. So what else, folks? What else can we chat about that you're interested in? I know Sandra mentioned optics. I can briefly talk about it, but really, if you want to know about optics, I would just encourage going to Julio's optic file here and reading through it. But for those who don't know what an optic is, it is a concept from functional programming that allows you to, like, it's a term that evolved out of like functional programming. That allows you to focus on a part of an immutable data structure and either read or update them in a composable way.
If we can wait like a couple seconds, that we have ads, so people following us from Twitch can just wait a second.
Oh my god, all right, they're back. Sebastian, if you subscribe to my channel, you don't get ads.
Shameless plug in here.
Shameless plug. Yeah, Mike says it's a profunctor because that means something to the rest of us. Yeah. So anything that doesn't exist in Effect 4 that I might rely on in Effect 3? Yes. That is my answer. I think the biggest one that we went over earlier is Effect.Service. but you can take a look at the migration guide to understand how to migrate to Effect v4 for that. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into the theory of optics, but I think looking at like an example probably will give. Yeah, FiberRef is another good one that doesn't exist anymore. True. Runtime doesn't exist anymore. So anyways, optics are ways of like focusing on a piece of a data structure and then allowing you to like manipulate that data structure. So if you have a type S that has an A field, you can create an optic for S with optic.id and then focus on A, like the key A, which will give you access to that key. So this optic then can be used to get the value. You can also replace that like value. You can modify that value. Modify is like replace, but you get access to the previous value. So this is like a simple example. But you can, in a world where you have very complex objects and you want to, for example, in the following example, you have an employee that is part of a company that has an address, that has a street with a name. If you want to capitalize the first letter of the street name of the company address, with JavaScript, you'd have to like drill into this, clone everything, and like you can do it. It's just like it's not always the easiest thing to read. With things like immer, which actually affect Schema supports. I think it's Schema that supports immer by default now. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, so. Mike. Or Mattia. I think it's in the Schema docs.
So. Yeah.
But you can build an optic that drills down to that value, right? So you can just build an optic that does this, drills down to name, and then you can modify that name by capitalizing it, and you get back the object, but now with the name capitalized. So there's some pretty detailed docs that Julio wrote in here for transformations and things that you can do with optics. It's pretty cool. Definitely suggest taking a look for folks that are interested.
Yeah, I confirm that Effect schema supports the immerable trait, so that you can use immer to modify deeply properties of immerable schemas. So you can
actually generate a optic from a schema. So if you have a schema, you can use 2ISO to get like a lens, for example, on a particular value. But yeah, there's like some cool stuff in here. Why use functional optics when we already have immer? And so Julio wrote some like information here about when optics are useful versus immer. Anyway, I'm not going to go through this whole like set of documentation, but I think Julio does a really good job of making the case for optics and talking about them. There are also some changes to HTTP API. I think Julio has been documenting them, mostly to the way that you describe and build up the spec for the API. So again, take a look at the documentation that Julio's been putting together. I'm going to try to make one of these documents as well for the AI SDK, because I've done a ton of work refactoring the AI SDK. Oh, I know something that we can show right now that will make Johannes so happy, and I'll never have to hear about my double spacing ever again.
Oh, oh yes.
I'll never have to hear about it again. Oops. Command option. No. Flag. Okay, so let's say we have the git CLI const. What's a good command that has a flag on it? commit
Force.
message equals
can
flag
force.
dot make flag dot string text flag dot message dot pipe flag flag dot with alias m with description the commit message const commit command dot make commit message. Oh, and then I'll dot pipe with description commit your changes. And then we can just do command. We can just say git command dot make git command dot with subcommands commit. Command dot run command git.
Mm.
Let's just do it this way. What did I forget? Whoops. I forgot. It automatically parses. And then we can do effect.provide node services.layer. Node services replaces node context. Because again, service terminology. Node runtime.run main. Johannes, as if you've never injected a set timeout into your website to then later remove it and claim you made it faster. I certainly never did that. What was I doing? Node, scratchpad, scratchpad, logger. Look at this beautiful help documentation that Johannes will be so happy about.
So compact. Wow.
Your CLIs will no longer have double spaces. I apologize to anybody who misses or prefers the double spacing, but at least the help is a pluggable service now, so you can plug in your own renderer if you want. So don't act so excited, Adam. Some people miss the double spacing. Okay? Some people like their whole terminal screen being taken up by double spaces. Some people prefer it. Some people read better that way.
So we got a couple of more questions. One is like, I would like a guide on how to implement such pipeable stuff like flag the string in a clean way. And well, good news. If you are using the effect package, it's not like difficult, because what you have to do is like to implement the pipeable interface from the pipeable module from effect, and the pipeable module also export a pipe arguments, I think it's called, a method that you just need to pass in your structure. You need to define a pipe method that just calls the pipe arguments, and that's really it.
Yeah. To make a pipeable data structure, like Mattia said, all you have to do is first in the type, extend pipeable.
Yeah.
Right. And pipeable is the thing that forces your type to have pipe on it. And then usually in the effect types, the way that we implement pipeable is unsafely because of the overloads. Like we don't want to have to do it ourselves. So usually we'll create like a prototype for our objects, and we'll just have a method sitting on the prototype. Pipe arguments comes from the pipeable module. So if we go to the top, pipe arguments, and yeah, you can just create a prototype, and then for all the, when you're creating an instance of your data structure, you can use object.create to do it. I think there's also like a pipeable class mix-in. Maybe I made that up. Oh no, there is. You could create a class for your data structure and have it extend pipeable. This will add the method for you. Yeah.
And there was another question, I think.
I don't like all this hate I'm getting in chat for my double spaces.
Can we have grouping group for HTTP API now? I don't think so.
I don't think that is a feature yet, Alex. But feel free to chat about it with Julio, I think is working on HTTP right now. What other questions do you have, folks? What else can we show?
Let me check. Let me recheck my list I made before streaming. It's more like an internal simplification, but probably it's worth mentioning the cause data type that has been simplified a lot.
There is a migration guide for that.
Yeah.
Show your neovim dot files. You can go to my Nix configuration. No, sorry. My neovim configuration is written in Nix. So you'd have to go to nixvim on my personal org if you want to see my neovim configs. Perf improvements. I don't have any benchmarks to show you. I don't think. We just have schema ones, but they don't compare v3 to v4.
Recommended way in place of data.tagged.
There's a migration guide that talks about the cause simplification. So for folks who are using cause under the hood, we simplified the data type quite substantially. It's basically just a read-only array of, like, I think we actually renamed this now. I think this migration guide might be a little out of date. Did we? Yeah, reasons. Cause is just a read-only array of reasons now. Is schema.tagged the recommended way in place of data.tagged to create errors? Did we add data.tagged error back?
We have, I think we have both. Yeah, we have both.
Data.tagged error exists. And I think, Julio, we for the longest time didn't have schema.tagged error implemented. It was going to be like schema.class, and then you have to insert the tag yourself, but we decided to put it back. So I think
it's already there, but I think it's called tagged error class.
Yeah.
Because I had to change it in DLSP before. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so cool. Well, if there are no other like major questions, if it seems like the number of questions and comments has died down a bit, we can probably close office hours at this point. I'm getting tired anyways. But we're very excited that this is finally out and available to you all. We're really excited for you all to get your hands on it and test and give us feedback. Tell us what works, tell us what doesn't, either in Discord or in an issue, depending on what you feel is most appropriate. Major question, how does cluster work? FIWs, you are going to get banned.
You are on the right route to get banned, yeah.
But the remaining 21 hours of the stream, yes. I know. I'm
yeah.
not built for 24-hour streams anymore. Anyway, thank you all for attending office hours. I hope you're all as excited as we are. Big kudos to the
Thank you.
contributors, but also like a huge thanks to the community for making this release possible. Let us know what you think. And yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Thank you
Cheers,
again.
everyone.
Bye bye, everyone.